Welcome to this training video on finding your way around the European Pharmeuropa Online, Pharmeuropa, and the Knowledge Database. My name is Chris Jarvis, and I'm a Scientific Editor and Scientific Program Manager at the European Pharmeuropa Department and the IT and Publications Division of the EDQM. I'll start by showing how you can find these publications and databases on the EDQM website. There's a dedicated page on the EDQM website called Databases, where you can find the links to the various EDQM publications and databases. The link to this Databases page can be found under Useful Information in the blue section that appears at the bottom of the page throughout the EDQM website. Clicking on that link will take you to the Databases page. As you can see, there are quite a few resources listed here, so I've rearranged it a little in order to show the content more clearly. Here you can see the various resources and descriptions a little better. There's a great deal of information available via this page, so it's worthwhile spending some time browsing the various resources. But the ones we're looking at in this webinar are Pharmeuropa, which also includes Pharmeuropa Bio and Scientific Notes, the Knowledge Database, and over on the right, the European Pharmeuropa Online. And we'll start with this one, the European Pharmeuropa Online. There's the direct link that will take you to the landing page for the publication. From the home page, you can access the latest versions of the Pharmeuropa, and today I'll be focusing on its content, but there is some important information at the bottom of the home page, which I'll just zoom in slightly there. And it's important that you should familiarize yourself with that before consulting Pharmeuropa. So we'll start with some general information about the Pharmeuropa Online. The 10th edition was released on a new publications platform that has been rolled out across the EDQM over a number of years. The online versions are cumulative and are bilingual, so you will have access to both English and French versions. There are a number of new features that have been introduced with the new platform, and there's direct access to additional information from within the text themselves, in particular the knowledge database, which I'll be covering later on. The Pharmeuropa can be accessed from all recent common operating systems, and it's provided on an adaptive website, which allows it to be tablet and smartphone friendly, and much more comfortable to use on devices such as those with smaller screens. And there's a range of licensing options available, but I won't be going into the details here, and full information on those options is available in the guides and the FAQs that can be found on the EDQM website. There are a few particular features in the Pharmeuropa Online that I'll highlight. To start with, there are direct links to text in the Pharmeuropa. So if, for example, you're consulting a monograph and a reference is made to a general chapter or to a reagent, it appears with a hyperlink that you can click on in order to be taken directly to the relevant text. One of the significant changes with the new platform is the fact that each text has its own individual URL or address, which makes navigating between texts a lot easier. There are a variety of search options and the possibility to save and manage your searches and reuse them. And the way that changes in text are indicated was also modified for the 10th edition, so that all revisions and corrections are now indicated with change marks, including simple editorial changes rather than just the technical changes. And there are a number of ways that you can browse the texts. The table of contents has been improved and is more reactive, and browsing between search results has also been improved. The fact that each text now has its own URL means that a browser's standard navigation buttons can be used to go backwards and forwards through the text that you've been consulting. So it means that if you've been consulting one text and then click on a hyperlink to another text and then onto another text, you can use the backwards and forwards arrows to navigate back to the first texts and jump back and forth in a much more intuitive way. And the fact that the same platform is being used across the EDQM means that the same authentication database and therefore the same login details can be used for various other EDQM websites, such as Pharmeuropa, Petform, and so on. All subscribers to the electronic and print versions of the Pharmacopoeia also have access to the Pharmacopoeia archives. Once a particular additional supplement is no longer implemented, it is transferred to the archives. So, for example, in January 2021, supplement 10.2 was moved to the archives. And the Pharmacopoeia archives are provided in PDF format. So once you access the Pharmacopoeia online, you will arrive at the search page. The table of contents panel appears on the left with the search field occupying the main window. And the search pane offers a number of ways to search the Pharmacopoeia. There's the standard full text search, for which there's the typical range of search operations that can be performed. And you can click on the search syntax link to the right of the search field for further information on those. And there are also targeted search fields, so you can search specifically in the title or in the text number and so on. The table of contents can be used in a number of different ways itself. For a start, the checkboxes can be used in conjunction with the search pane as a filter to restrict the results to selected texts or sections. And it can also be used to browse directly to a text. As you see here, there are small arrows alongside some of the titles. And this indicates that it is a section or a subsection. And if you click on those arrows, you can open up the tree display and can navigate down to a particular text. So once you've reached the text itself, so title without an arrow next to it, clicking on the title will open up the particular text in the main window. So here I've clicked on droppers and you can see the main text there. If you click on the section title, then instead of the text itself appearing, you find a list of contents of that section displayed in the main window instead. And then clicking on one of those titles in the main window will open up that particular text. As mentioned, the table of contents can be used to filter a search before launching it. It can also be used to filter search results in real time once the search has been performed. So in this example, a search was launched for the term fluorescence, which was found in several hundred texts in the Pharmacopoeia. Selecting one or more texts or sections in the table of contents will restrict the search results to those chosen texts. So this can be used to restrict searches to one specific language, for example, or to a group of general chapters or to a specific selection of texts. So in this case here, I've selected 5 texts and the results change accordingly to take account of that selection. And now there are only 3 results being returned by the search. Once a search has been carried out, the Save Query button on the search results page allows you to save the query. You will subsequently be able to load and re-execute that same search at a later date via the My Queries button that appears then on the search page. And finally, the Tools menu allows you to print or export as an HTML file the contents of the main page. This applies for search results, as on this page now, or if you're consulting a document itself, you have the same print and export option available for that document via the Tools button again. So if you take a slightly closer look at another example of a text, in this case a monograph, paracetamol, there are a number of helpful features available. As mentioned previously, the browser navigation buttons can be used to go backwards and forwards through the browsing history, so you can find your way back to an earlier text if you've jumped around between different texts and hyperlinks. And this is related to the fact that each text has its specific URL. Here we can see that the end of the URL includes 0049E, and that's because this is monograph number 0049 in English. This means that if you know the number of a particular text, you could go straight to it by simply changing the number in the URL, and the browser would take you straight to that text. Just above the monograph, there are buttons to switch the language, view a PDF of the current text, and go to the knowledge database. And I'll talk a little about the knowledge database towards the end of the webinar. And underneath those 3 buttons, you have links to the general notices and general monographs. And these are very important texts and need to be taken into account whenever the European Pharmacopoeia is being used. So there's always an immediate access to them at the top of each text. To the right, there's an adaptive toolbar in which the buttons that appear will change depending on the situation. So if, for example, you've performed a search, you can return to the original search pane via the magnifying glass button there at the top. You could return to the list of results just underneath that. You can move back and forth between the documents that have been returned by a search. And if you have performed a text search and that there are multiple hits for the particular search term in the currently displayed text, then extra buttons will appear in this toolbar. And those will allow you to jump between the highlighted hits in the particular text itself. So the toolbar adapts to the situation that you're in. So that's the European Pharmacopoeia Online, and next we'll move on to Pharmeuropa. Pharmeuropa has also been revised and moved over to the common EDQM publications platform, with the new version in production since January 2020. Having said that, the layout and functionality remain largely unchanged, so it remains intuitive to existing users. As mentioned earlier, there is a single registration system across these publications, which means that there's a single sign-on for the Pharmacopoeia Online, Pharmeuropa, and PEDForm. And finally, here's the direct link to the website, but of course, as I mentioned earlier, it can be found via the databases link that appears in the blue banner that's at the bottom of the page on most EQM websites. So this is the Pharmeuropa homepage. The first thing to mention is that access to Pharmeuropa Online is free of charge, as it has been ever since Pharmeuropa became an online-only publication. And I'll also take the opportunity to point out the bar at the top of the screen, which also appears on the Pharmacopoeia Online page. This shows the various publications that are linked and can be navigated between directly thanks to the single sign-on feature. Pharmeuropa includes a number of different resources, the principal one being the text under public inquiry, but there are also Pharmeuropa bio and scientific notes, Pharmeuropa archives, as well as a range of technical and other useful information. So we'll look at each of these in a little more detail. And starting with the text for comment. This is the public forum of the European Pharmacopoeia, where the public can provide comments on new texts and texts that are under revision. There are 4 issues a year. While texts are published on an ongoing basis, they are grouped into these 4 issues in order to be able to organize the commenting periods and deadlines for the texts. And only new and revised texts will appear in Pharmeuropa. So it's important to remember that corrections and minor revisions are not published in Pharmeuropa for public comment. Those go directly to the Pharmacopoeia Commission for adoption. When you enter the text for comments section, you arrive at the search page. And this is very similar to the layout for the European Pharmacopoeia, with a table of contents on the left and the search fields in the main part of the page. But the search options are slightly different because there's different information available for the Pharmeuropa text compared with the Pharmacopoeia texts. So here you can search a reference number or a working group, as well as by the title or the text number. In this case, I've used the table of contents to navigate to one of the texts. You can see that the layout of the text itself is similar to the Pharmacopoeia, but there are some important differences. At the top is the How to Comment button, which links to a document that explains how you should provide comments depending on your particular circumstances. And at the start of each text is a unique reference number, and there are also line numbers at the end of each paragraph or image or part of a table, etc. And together these help to identify exactly where a comment is being made. So if, for example, you're providing comments to a national authority, you'll be able to specify the particular part of the particular text for which you wish to provide each comment. And next we have Pharmeuropa and Bio Scientific Notes. Sorry, Pharmeuropa Bio and Scientific Notes. This publication provides articles and feedback from users of the European Pharmacopoeia related to the work of the Pharmacopoeia. It's also where establishment reports for biological reference preparations are published. Again, it has a similar layout to Pharmeuropa and the European Pharmacopoeia, with the table of contents on the left and a simplified full text search field, since these are PDF texts and are grouped by issue. Individual articles can be accessed via the table of contents before the issue is complete, and then generally at the end of the year, the articles are compiled into a single issue of the publication. That's why in the table of contents here, for example, for 2021, you can see the individual articles, whereas for previous years, they're all compiled into a single publication for the year, as shown here for 2020. Okay, moving on to the Pharmeuropa archives, which contain all of the previous issues of Pharmeuropa dating back to the very first one in 1987. And there are also a number of special issues that were published as part of Pharmeuropa in the early years. These too can be found in the archives. Similar to the Pharmeuropa bio and scientific notes, they can be browsed by year and issue or searched by keyword. Here, for example, you can see the special issues in the table of contents, which are provided separately. And above them are the English and French issues of Pharmeuropa. Again, there is a standard full text search engine, as these are all PDF documents. So it's possible to browse to a particular issue of Pharmeuropa or search using keywords. And here I've browsed to the Pharmeuropa 17.1. Okay, so moving on now to the bottom section of the Pharmeuropa homepage, there are a number of tabs where a range of information related to the EDQM can be found. Under the What's New tab, you can find general news, latest updates and events, status of Pharmeuropa issues and new texts, comments on texts that were revised in the last European Pharmacopoeia supplement, rapid implementations, etc. The Pharmacopoeial Harmonization tab contains all the information on the harmonization process, draft harmonized text for comments, the harmonization status of text, information on the Pharmacopoeial discussion group, and links to the partner pharmacopoeias, the JP and USP. The Reader's Tribune is a publication that provides discussion articles and letters commenting on policies and decisions of the European Pharmacopoeia Commission, or feedback on articles that have appeared in Pharmeuropa bio and scientific notes. So it's an opportunity for users to express their opinions and provide feedback. The Technical Information tab contains general information about policies and explanations related to pharmacopoeial text, or changes that have been made or are forthcoming, and can cover a wide range of subjects, such as supporting information related to the control of extractable elements and plastics, the legal status of the reorganized chapters on materials for containers, background information on specific subjects such as reverse osmosis in water for injections, etc. So it's a combination of new and historical technical information and explanations are made available here. And some other useful information is found in the Useful Information tab, such as publication schedules, lists of adopted text, etc., the work of the Pharmacopoeia, such as the procedures for elaboration of texts, how to comment and how to contact your national authority. And then there are links to other useful sites, such as the help desk, the FAQs, certification, and pages describing the structure of the EDQM and the members and observers of the European Pharmacopoeia Commission. And finally, the Publications tab contains links to other EDQM publications such as standard terms, PED form, a range of guidelines for transfusions, transplantations, combating counterfeit medicinal products, as well as the various European Pharmacopoeia technical guides. And this final part of the presentation is about the knowledge database, which I mentioned earlier. The purpose of the knowledge database is to provide additional information on texts that appear in the Pharmacopoeia. It is accessible free of charge, and the aim is to improve transparency so that users can contribute more easily to the work of the Pharmacopoeia. It contains links to information such as chromatograms, reference standards, trade names for reagents such as HPLC and GC columns, biological kits, and also links to the list of holders of the CEPs. And this link will take you to the overall knowledge database. You can also access the database directly from the Pharmeuropa Online by clicking on the link at the top of the text. That will take you to the knowledge database for the specific text that you're consulting. If you're using the printed version of the Pharmacopoeia, there's also a 2D barcode, and if you have an appropriate smartphone or tablet with a camera and a barcode reader, that'll also take you to the same knowledge database page. And here's the top part of the knowledge database page for the monograph paracetamol that we just showed. At the top, you'll find the details of the monograph, such as its status, the monograph number and titles, as well as the last time it was published in Pharmeuropa and the Pharmacopoeia. Following that is the section related to any ongoing revision of the monograph. So if a revision is ongoing, then this blue section will appear. And if there's no ongoing revision, then it won't be visible. It includes the state of work, which I'll come on to in a second, the last edition of Pharmeuropa in which it was published, and a brief description of the aim of the revision. Regarding the state of work, right at the bottom of the knowledge database page is a key to describe what each of the different states mean. In this case, it's state of work 2, which means that it is in the Pharmeuropa publication process. Next, we have the chromatogram field, and if there's a link there, it means that there are one or more chromatograms available for download. It's important to emphasize that these chromatograms are not a mandatory part of the monograph, which is why they don't appear in the Pharmacopoeia text itself. And furthermore, they're not necessarily complete. They don't necessarily include all of the impurities that are mentioned in the monograph. So clicking on that link will take you to the page where you can see the 3 chromatograms that are available for the monograph paracetamol. So while they're not a mandatory part of the monograph and are not necessarily complete, they can still be helpful for users to check their tests. And next up, we have the history field. And if you click on View History, it'll provide high-level information about previous revisions and corrections. This has been implemented since the 5th edition, so it doesn't go back any further than that. So here, for example, we have this sort of information for paracetamol. So while it's non-exhaustive, it does give a brief idea of the main subjects of the revisions that have taken place. And here we have the reference standards. And this section lists all of the reference standards that are used in the monograph and provides links to the CRS database. So clicking on the link there for paracetamol CRS will take you to the page dedicated to that particular chemical reference substance, where there's a lot of other information provided, including safety data sheets, origin of goods documents, batch validity statements, storage and shipping information, and much more. And this is still part of the knowledge database. It's just further down the page, still part of the page for paracetamol. The practical information section provides additional information to users, such as the trade names of HPLC columns that we used during method development and other reagents that we used. At each revision of a monograph, this information is updated. So in this particular example, you can see that this comes from the last revision in supplement 9.4. And finally, there's the section on certificates of suitability. This indicates whether any certificates have been granted for the substance, so you can see the list of certificates, the holder, status, etc. This is an excerpt from the online list of CEPs, which is a separate database, but the link shown will take you to the relevant excerpts from that database. And that's the end of this presentation. I hope it's provided a useful overview to these publications and websites. So thank you for your attention and goodbye.